Okie bloopers, Niitaniko Cutjaw, and welcome back to my channel. A social movement known as the Black Lives Matter movement started over a decade ago, but made a jarring and international reemergence following the death of a black man named George Floyd at the hands of police in Minnesota. The Black Lives Matter movement is a movement set toward addressing the excessive and unnecessary use of force and violence from police officers against black people. I would first off like to make it clear of who I am in relation to all this. I am a young Native American woman who does, in fact, support the Black Lives Matter movement. I believe it's completely unacceptable to live in a relatively constant state of fear due to police officers and especially to be killed so callously. As a Native American, too, I also know how it feels to live with a bullseye on your back. With that being said, as much as I genuinely support the movement, I believe it will ultimately fail with the goal of allowing black people to live free from worry of police brutality. But before we discuss this topic further, I would like to invite you to join the Bluebird family if you haven't already. If you're new to my channel, I predominantly discuss issues that impact the Native American community as well as general social topics that impact everyone. So if you're interested in gaining true, complete knowledge of Native Americans and Indigenous people as a whole, you are encouraged to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on my other social media, including Twitter and Instagram. Visit my blog site, link in the description. Also, if you would like to support this channel further, you may do so by becoming a patron through Patreon for as low as $2 per month. By becoming a patron, you'll receive access to exclusive content, including polls, quizzes, exclusive videos, early videos, media reviews, and even excerpts from my first upcoming novel series, Saints of a Warriors Class. You can start at any time and cancel at any time. If you are unable to become a patron, it's understood, but any support toward this channel, both physically and in spirit, is greatly appreciated. Now, I think what many people fail to realize about the police here in America is that the police was founded on racism. America itself was founded on racism, but even besides that, police officers were always used to subjugate and terrorize black people. During slavery, police actually played the role of slave captors in the sense that they would capture runaway slaves and attempt to return them to their original owners. Once slavery ended, police was used to enforce segregation or separate and unequal social systemics and Jim Crow laws that ensured black people maintained a socially inferior position to Caucasians. And once Jim Crow ended, policemen were sent out to sick dogs on black people and spray them with water hoses during the Civil Rights Movement. With such an ugly history under its belt, it should surprise no one that police brutality in America has resulted in death after death within the black community. What people don't realize, though, is that black people aren't the only ethnic group in this country whose lives are deemed irrelevant by the U.S. police force. Native Americans are killed just as often, and unlike black people who actually outnumber us, our numbers are far fewer. So when we die, it's an especially egregious thing. I mentioned this in another video, but Native Americans have never stopped being terrorized by the dominant society. But because Caucasians, who own the overwhelming majority of the media, don't want us to truly be seen, they don't publicly air our issues like they do with black people. And stay tuned for an upcoming video where I explain how and why black people are socially treated differently than Native Americans. But going back to the Black Lives Matter movement, specifically in relation to black people, the police will always maintain a racist and an oppressive relationship with black people. This is because the system that created the police force was based on brutality. As long as Caucasians, who by the way don't even belong on this land, continue to rule over a nation that was never theirs to begin with, black people and of course Native American people, will continue to deal with police brutality and a system that was created to ensure white supremacy. You can't live in a country created through genocide, theft, and lawlessness and actually believe that the law enforcement of such a country is going to somehow be upright and just. So in other words, I support the concept of Black Lives Matter, but I seriously doubt it will ever result in any real change. And if it does result in 2 or 3 new laws being passed against police brutality, It's important to remember that the government violates its own laws all the time. Take it from a Native American. Just because you strike a deal with the U.S. government, that does not mean that the U.S. government is going to uphold its part of the bargain. So a lot of people will hear me say this and ask if the Black Lives Matter movement won't achieve preventing police brutality, what will? And my response is Native American sovereignty. Now, before y'all come for my life in the comment section, claiming that I'm trying to subtract from Black Lives Matter, hear me out first. Just think about this for a moment. If Native Americans had sovereignty of our land like we're supposed to, there would be no need for the Black Lives Matter movement because Native Americans didn't even have police. All things considered, though, everything in society would be far better if the issue of sovereignty was corrected. Homelessness, hunger, pollution, literally every problem in North America today arose from Caucasians sticking their noses where they don't belong. These issues wouldn't exist here if my people still had ownership over our land like we were supposed to. Any type of so-called progress the Black Lives Matter movement makes can be undermined or completely ignored at any time. If the dominant society refuses to relinquish the sovereignty they stole through brutality, you'd have to be delusional to actually believe that they're going to completely reconfigure their police force. And I know a lot of people are going to argue against this and say that Caucasians are making great strides to end white supremacy in this country. But if you believe this, you must be a white supremacist yourself, because not only is that not true, but it's dangerously delusional as well. If you would like more insight on this topic, I insist you watch my videos discussing Independence Day and my response to the Washington Redskins changing its team name, both of which I have listed below in the description. As a real-life reference, recall the LA riots following the brutal beating of Rodney King in the 90s. Did all that rioting lead to major change with police brutality? No, it didn't, because here we are, again, decades later, with yet more rioting for the same reason. The same thing is going to keep on happening over and over again as long as Caucasians are in control of native land. White supremacy still exists, and as long as Caucasians have any type of social or political power over a land they dominated through inhumane means, white supremacy will always be alive. People of color being able to interact daily with Caucasians means nothing. Just because Native Americans and Black people can go to school with Caucasians and work beside Caucasians, and maybe even date Caucasians if you're crazy enough to do so, that doesn't mean white supremacy no longer exists. As a Native American who has to actually relearn my culture, thanks to relocation and warfare forced upon my people, who speaks English fluently but knows very few words of my own tribal tongue, and who can only wear traditional Native American attire when it's contained within the context of a powwow, don't you dare tell me that white supremacy is a figment of my imagination. As long as America exists, so will white supremacy, and as long as white supremacy exists, Black people will never truly be safe from police brutality. Also, I know some people have chosen to believe lies that Caucasians have put forth about Native Americans, such as lies that we enslaved Black people, enslaved each other, and waged war against neighboring tribes. The dominant society is trying to rewrite history in order to fulfill yet another underhanded plot to promote white supremacy, but it won't work. Listen, I know my people, okay? And I'm a realist. I'm known for speaking the truth, and even if it hurts people's feelings. This is why I'm called Kutja. So if my people actually had enslaved, I would be the first one to confirm it. But I won't, because that's not true. Why would people who believe that the land has a spirit enslave each other? And why would we enslave another ethnic group that an invading race brought to our land without our permission or approval? Y'all, that doesn't even make sense. Native Americans don't believe in human confinement or captivity, which is why we didn't have prisons and also why we didn't practice slavery. Some will bring up the so-called 5 civilized tribes, but stay tuned for an upcoming video series where I explain and prove how these 5 tribes were actually penetrated by Caucasians and how the top political figure of the Cherokee tribe today is currently a white man. That's going to be a great series, no doubt. Ultimately, Europeans are the real reason why America is a mess. Now, I don't want to just end this video by voicing my support of the Black Lives Matter movement and how I think it won't actually accomplish anything in the long run. I would like to offer a real solution, and that solution is to consider supporting the blue movement as well. I know this would ultimately dismantle white supremacy in North America and idealistically, eventually the world at large. So for those who also support the Black Lives Matter movement, I implore you to at least educate yourselves about the blue movement before you immediately dismiss it. And if you would like more information about the blue movement, you can access that through the link below in the description. But I would like to hear your thoughts on this matter. Leave your comments down below. And with that being said, I'm Cut Jaw. This is the Bone Thread, and I'll see you all in the next video.